Greetings, my name is Michael Gage and we are at the Oak Spring Garden Foundation in Upperville, Virginia, and we are going to take a walk on Peachtree Lane. The name has sort of been lost to history. Across the road in the 1800s, the neighbor's surname was Peach, which may have something to do with it. Or on this side of the far side of the rock wall here was an orchard, and that may have something to do with it. But regardless of the name, this was the original pathway, carriageway, horse path into the Fletcher house. Robert Fletcher settled the property in the early 1800s, and this was the original approach to the residence. You can see it here if you look behind me. It's sort of sunken into the crest of the hill a little bit, but we can also see it on the 1934 aerial photograph. So this area around Upper Fauquier County, Loudoun County, I believe also into Clark County, has a really high concentration of stone walls. And that's it's one of three areas in the U.S. that has a high concentration of stone walls, the other being eastern New York and New England, north of the old glacial boundary, and the limestone region of Kentucky's inner bluegrass. This one is a dry stack stone wall. This is an old wall. And you can tell from the sort of the rounded nature of these rocks that these rocks have not been, with a few exceptions, have not been worked or shaped too much by the builder. These stones came out of the ground during agricultural times. In the center of the wall here, and again here, these are chestnut oak rounds that are used as guides. The wall has some taper to it. And those are placed as guides to get sort of the correct width as you get halfway up the wall. It was probably done by slave labor, and the slaves that were on these properties, we know that from the slave census that Nathan Loughborough's farm, which is now Rokeby, there were 24 slaves on that property in 1860. I didn't find the slave census for Oak Spring. However, in 1841, Robert Fletcher willed his 5 slaves among his various children, and so we have the names of those 5 individuals. They could have been working on this wall in 1841. Following the stone wall along Peachtree Lane, and we've hit this really nice tree here. This is a hackberry. It's a really common species to find growing along fence lines and fence rows, old stone walls. Its diagnostic feature is this bark that forms sort of these very warty kind of ridges. It has small fruits, about pea-sized, little dark purple, reddish colored fruits. It's often called sugarberry or sugar nut. And the birds will pick those up, and then as they sit along these fences, they disperse the seeds. And so that's why hackberry is so common or one of the reasons why it's so common on fence rows. So we've made our way about halfway down Peachtree Lane toward from the road to where the original house was, and I just want to stop and point out this woodland that's off behind us. We're at the edge of the property, the modern property line now, but when this property was settled, that was all part of this farm, that woodland, and the far side of that woodland was the property boundary. So when you see a large grove of tall oaks like that, then you can be pretty certain that that's an original forest that goes back to settlement times. There should be white oaks in there that are upwards of 200 years old. And what's really interesting about that site is that from Robert Fletcher's will in 1841, he had a survey done of the whole farm as he divided it to his children, and that woodland shows up as a woodland, and it's under the same configuration in 1841 as it is today. So we reached the end of Peachtree Lane, the original lane that went to the house. This, of course, is the Mellon residence. Was built in the early 1950s. Prior to that, when this lane was being used, you would have arrived to a small log cabin, the Fletcher log cabin. It was made of chestnut logs, and it was oriented exactly the same, and it was on the same exact footprint as the existing Mellon house. So I hope you've enjoyed our tour of Peachtree Lane, and we will see you next time.